After a 7-month break which has felt like an eternity, the revised start to the Formula 1 2020 season is finally upon us. Since March 2020, the outbreak of COVID-19 has left hardcore F1 fans to rely on esports, virtual Grand Prix and the occasional F1 driver Twitch stream to help fill the void, whilst our favourite turbocharged V6 powerhouses remain dormant. Whilst these proved to be a hit with the F1 faithful, it also proved to be a fun medium to introduce newer fans to the sport. Now, if you're new to F1, first of all, welcome to the F1 community, and since you stopped by, make sure to like and share this video, and also please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out a lot. We already have some great podcasts and we'll be producing some great content for you guys in the near future, including more videos like this and hopefully a new gaming series of F1 2020. Okay, so shameless plug aside, you're probably wondering how you're going to understand a plethora of complicated rules and regulations, along with an ever-changing racing format that can seem quite daunting in order to enjoy Formula 1 racing. Well, with that in mind, allow Courtney and I to help you out and simplify the complexities as we take you through the DNF1 Beginner's Guide to Formula 1 racing. So let's take a look at how a normal Formula 1 race weekend works. The current F1 race weekend is comprised of 5 sessions, 3 practice sessions, qualifying and then the race. The 3 practice sessions are split over Friday and Saturday. FP1 and FP2 take place during Friday morning and afternoon respectively. This is followed by FP3 on Saturday morning. These sessions are designed to allow the teams and drivers to learn the track, optimise their setups and gather valuable data that will help them in qualifying and then the race. After practice, we then have qualifying on Saturday afternoon. The format for qualifying has changed many times since F1 began, quite often being experimental changes that the aficionados either love, like the current format, or ones that completely flop miserably, like the elimination style qualifying session which was introduced at the beginning of 2016, but then reverted back to the current format after only 2 races.
If you think that was bad, Adam, remember how boring qualifying was back in 2006?
Well, I'm all for a fun F1 history lesson, but we're trying to make F1 simple and interesting for the new guys, mate, so it's probably best to leave that one alone for now. The current F1 qualifying session is split into 3 parts, Q1, Q2, and you guessed it, Q3.
High five!
Q1 is a 20-minute session where all 20 drivers try to set the fastest time possible, with the slowest 5 drivers being eliminated at the end of the session and thus making up grid positions 16 to 20 based on the order they finished in Q1. So once Q1 is done, the times are reset and we can begin with Q2. In Q2, the remaining 15 cars then have 15 minutes this time to set the fastest time possible again. But this time, it is the fastest 10 drivers that will qualify for Q3, aka the pole position shootout. The 5 slowest drivers from Q2 will make up positions 11 to 15.
What's important to note is the top 10 drivers must start the race on the tyre they set the fastest lap with in Q2. This rule doesn't apply if either qualifying or the race itself took place in wet conditions.
So once we've got Q2 out of the way, all the times are reset and we can commence with the pole position shootout in Q3. All of the 10 drivers are given a fresh set of the softest compound tyre, don't worry, we'll get to tyres much later on, and then go out and try to set the fastest time possible and give themselves the best possible starting position for the race. Once that is completed, we finally have our grid all set and in order for the race ahead on Sunday.
Before we talk about the race, let's note that the qualifying order is only provisional. Sometimes grid penalties change the order, but seeing as this is a beginner's guide, I don't want to bore you with the details.
A Formula 1 race is traditionally defined as the smallest number of complete laps that exceeds 305 kilometers or 2 hours, whichever comes first. The only exception to this, however, is the Monaco Grand Prix, which has a set race length of 78 laps and 260.5 kilometers. The aim of the game is simple: drive as fast as you can and finish the race in the best position possible. If only the strategy was that simple. At the end of the race, the top 3 drivers will celebrate on the podium. Championship points are awarded for the top 10 finishers, and they are awarded as follows. You get the picture. A bonus point is now available for the fastest lap set during the race. However, this bonus point is only available to the top 10 finishers in that race. Over the course of the season, the drivers will aim to collect as many points as possible, where the driver with the most points at the end of the season will be crowned world champion. The team with the most combined points between their 2 drivers will be crowned constructors champions.
F1 is a global sport which usually takes place between March and November. It was originally hoped that we'd have 22 races this season before COVID-19 had its wicked way with us. No 2 circuits or races are ever the same. Each track provides a different challenge that each of the teams must ensure they optimise their setups in order to get the best possible result. There are currently 10 teams in Formula 1, each running 2 cars, making up 20 cars for each race. All the teams share the same ambition, which is to win races and world championships. You have the reigning and defending world champions Mercedes. Then you have last year's runner-ups Ferrari, and you have Red Bull. These teams are considered the biggest, the highest spending and fastest teams in Formula 1 today, and are most likely to be fighting for poles, wins and world championship. Then you have the rest of the grid that are trying to close the gap to catch these 3 teams. You have McLaren, Renault, Racing Point, AlphaTauri, Haas, Alfa Romeo and Williams. With changes in investment and regulations, the pecking order in Formula 1 changes all the time. So a lot of time, hard work and money has to be invested for teams to maintain any advantage they have or to catch up with teams that are ahead of them. It may not look it, but tyres have been a critical element of Formula 1. It's amazing how 4-round pieces of rubber can be instrumental to the success and failure of drivers and teams throughout the history of Formula 1. For example, did you know only 6 cars started the United States Grand Prix back in 2005?
What?
I know, right? Any guess what could cause such controversy? That's right, tyres. As much as I'd love to explain the details of this incident, this video is dragging on, so let's move on, shall we? Since 2011, all F1 teams have had tyres provided by Italian manufacturers Pirelli. For the 2020 season, there are 5 compounds of tyre that range from the softest, otherwise known as C5, to the hardest, otherwise known as C1. The softer the tyre, the grippier it is, but with that comes a trade-off in durability. This means a driver using a C5 tyre will be a lot faster than a driver using a C1 tyre, but the softer tyres wear away much faster, meaning the car with the softer tyres would have to pit more often, losing time in the process. So in theory, the C3 tyre will give a driver medium levels of grip and durability.
Now don't worry if that sounds confusing, guys. Even veteran F1 fans struggle to understand the complexity surrounding F1 tyres, and F1 is aware of that. To simplify this, for each race, Pirelli supply 3 of the 5 dry tyre compounds to the teams for each race and label them in accordance with where they belong in the tyre compound range we talked about earlier. These are the soft compound, recognised by the red stripe, the medium compound, recognised by the yellow stripe, and the hard compound, recognised by the white stripe.
Simple.
Under normal race conditions, each driver must use at least 2 different dry compounds of tyre during the race. If there is rain during the race and dry tyres don't work anymore, Then the dries will need to use the wet tyres. There are only two types of wet tyre, the green stripe tyres known as the intermediate tyres and the blue stripe tyres that are known as the wet tyres. The intermediate tyres are used when there is light rain and the track is wet, but not fully soaked. The wet tyres, however, are used when there is heavy rain and the track has too much standing water for the intermediate tyres to work properly. Tired of tyres? Don't worry, it'll start to make more sense after you watch a few races, I promise. So we've managed to cover quite a lot so far in this video, but there's still so much more to cover. But we'll be doing that in a future video. In the meantime, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel and also leave a comment. Until then, we'll see you in the DNF1's Beginner's Guide to Formula 1 Racing Part 2.